We are recording the interview of Jeff Sands. This interview is being conducted by David Barry from the Wright State University's Veteran Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at the Holiday Inn Hotel in Fairborn, Ohio. It is 1 p.m. on June 7th, 2019. Why don't we start with where and when were you born?
I was born January 2nd, 1951 in St. James, Minnesota.
And who were your parents and what did they do?
My father was Wilbur Sands and my mother was Evelyn. Do you want her maiden name or?
No, I mean...
Evelyn Sands.
And what were their occupations?
My father was a railroad conductor and my mom was a sales clerk at several outlets in our little hometown, drugstore, clothing store, sales clerk.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I had two older brothers.
And did you have any family members serve in the military?
My oldest brother, who passed away just April 25th, was in the Air Force prior to me, and he's probably the reason I went in the Air Force. And the middle brother never went in the service.
So what were you doing before you joined the Air Force?
I was in high school. I went in right after I graduated.
What did your brother do in the Air Force?
He was, if I remember correctly, he was a plumber, of all things.
And how shortly after did you join after he did?
Oh, he got out in 1964 and I didn't go in till 1969. He was my oldest brother and I'm the baby of three.
So what was it about your brother's service that made you want to?
We went as a family to go visit him at a location that he was stationed at in Peru, Indiana. At that time it was called Bunker Hill Air Force Base, and now I believe it's called Grissom Air Force Base. And I was the ripe old age of 10 or 11 years old, and I was just fascinated by these airplanes that were taking off and landing over the top of us at the end of the runway outside of the base. And I got to do this. And I thought about it for the next 8 years before I got out of high school, and I even enlisted before I got out of high school to go in because I wanted to be around airplanes. That's my reasoning.
The draft was going on at this time, correct?
Yeah.
Did that have any sway in it? Or?
No, for one thing, my recruiter lied to me. He said I was going to probably go to Europe, and I never seen the East Coast, let alone Europe. I spent all my out-of-country time in Vietnam and Thailand, and then the little bit I was in country was at Ellsworth Air Force Base in Rapid City, South Dakota.
How did your family feel about you joining?
They didn't have any qualms, regrets about it, other than be careful, be safe, all that other kind of stuff you get from your parents. But I think my dad was proud that I enlisted instead of waiting around for the draft and you don't know where you were going to go or who you were going to go with back then. And I just wanted to have a little more say into my future rather than have the draft determine what was going to happen to me. And that's my reasoning, I guess.
So you go to the recruiter's office, you get all signed up. Where did you go to basic at?
I went to basic at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas.
And how was that for you?
At the time, I thought it was the most rugged thing in the world that I'd ever been through, basic training, 8 weeks. But now I look back at it as the biggest Boy Scout camp I'd ever been to in my life. you constantly have a DI yelling in your face or in your ear to do this and do that. And you just learn to put up with it, and you learn the discipline end of the military in a hurry.
Were there any instructors that you can remember from basic that kind of stick
Yep,
out?
I can remember him well. Tech Sergeant Spaulding. He was a black man, and he was really funny. He caught me one day smiling, standing at attention, and I don't know if I should repeat this to you, but he said, "Don't you know," and he gets right up into my face, and he said, "Son, don't you know that smiling leads to liking, and liking leads to loving, and loving leads to..." And he said, "There ain't no way you're gonna..." Me. And David, I lost it. I burst out laughing, standing at attention, and I was doing push-ups the rest of the afternoon. But laughing while I was doing them, and I'll never forget that as long as I live. That was my big experience in basic training. He meant well. He was a DI. You know, that was his job, is to get you in shape and mentally and physically and all that other stuff. But he was funny in his own way, and I seen the humor in it. But a lot of people called it abuse, and I said, this ain't nothing, you know. But my dad used to talk to me worse than a lot of the DIs did, so it's no big deal to me.
So then, did you get to pick your job before going to basic, or was it something that you picked while you were at basic?
We took a test, and I can't remember what it was called. It was like an aptitude test.
Or the ASVAB?
Yeah, and it come out that my primary specialty would be mechanical. And when I got in, I said mechanical. Well, then they picked it for me. I was picked out to be a weapons mechanic. And I didn't really know what that all entailed as far as job description goes until I got to my next base after basic training, which was Lowry Air Force Base in Denver, Colorado. It was their weapons school there, where they train you on how to load certain different aircraft in the Air Force. And you had your bombers, you had your fighters, and you had your fighter bombers. And I was in the fighter bombers, F-4s, F-111s, F-105s, 106s, 102s. And they taught us the functions and the basics of all those aircraft. And I came out of there, and my first duty station after training was Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, Nevada on F-111s.
Now, once you got, or how long was your training?
The training lasted, it was sometime in August, and it finished about the middle of December. So August, September, October, November, 5 months. And it came out to weeks. I don't know how many weeks that comes out to, but we finished it and passed and all that stuff. And they determined that I should go to Nellis Air Force Base, Las Vegas, Nevada. And it was kind of ironical, because when I went home on leave for 30 days, an F-111 had crashed at Nellis Air Force Base when I was on leave. And when I came off leave and reported to that duty station at Nellis Air Force Base, to the 474th Tactical Fighter Wing, I think it was called, that plane happened to be in my squadron. And when I got there, the pieces, the remains of it, were in the hangar laying on the floor. And there wasn't a piece of that plane any bigger than this table. And it's a big plane. and both pilots were killed and stuff. But the left or the right wing fell off the plane, coming in on a low bombing run at supersonic speed. I think it was the right wing fell off, and the plane flipped over so fast, and they ejected, and they were in a module side by side, pilot, co-pilot, and they ejected right into the ground at about 1,300 miles an hour. Yeah, so it was ugly. So I never seen that plane fly.
Now, was this close to one of your first experiences?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously I wasn't there when it crashed. It crashed when I was home on leave in Minnesota. But I heard about it and followed it on the news, and then they said, both pilots had perished. And I said, geez, that's where I'm going, and lo and behold, when I got there, it was my squadron, a plane from the squadron that I was going to be assigned to, and the other thing there at Nellis Air Force Base is the home of the Thunderbirds acrobatic team. That's where they are stationed permanently, and that's where they practice. So I got to watch them every day, unless they were out on, someplace on the East Coast, West Coast, or wherever. But generally, they were there and got to watch them every day. So it was interesting. But I never worked on the F-111 while I was there. We just basically sat around and twiddled our thumbs for 5 months. And then I got stationed overseas to Thailand.
And then leading up to your Thailand deployment, did you feel pretty prepared? I mean, you said you were twiddling your thumbs, but...
Well, I was supposed to be working on planes. Well, we weren't working on planes because the planes were grounded, so there was nothing we could do with them. So they were trying to find out what caused the crash or what caused that wing to fall off. So consequently, everything else came to a standstill as far as loading bombs on them, practice bombs or whatever. They didn't want to do anything until they found out why that wing fell off, which I guess is understandable because bombs and ordnance are heavy, and this thing lost a wing, and it wasn't even that heavily loaded, I understand. But so I don't know what the reasoning was other than to investigate it and find out what the cause was, but I never seen it fly the whole time I was there. So it was different. And I thought, boy, I don't know about this military. They don't seem to know what they're doing or whatever, but I'm sure sitting around doing a lot of nothing. But then the military is hurry up and wait. That was probably still is that way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
how did you feel getting the deployment orders and gearing up to go to Thailand?
I was kind of excited about it. Because there was a friend of mine that enlisted with me on the buddy plan, and we went through basic training. We went through the same weapons school at Denver, Colorado, except when he got out of the school, he went to Phu Cat, Vietnam, and I went to Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada. But about 4 months into his deployment at Phu Cat, Vietnam, and he was working on F-100 Super Sabres there, loading them with bombs, rockets, and missiles. His dad passed away back in the States, and he died from an appendicitis attack, of all things. And he was an elderly guy. He was in his 70s, but he didn't get to the hospital or doctor soon enough, and the appendix burst, and the poison, it got to him before he passed away. Well, Gary went home for the funeral, and then the Air Force decided that he was the only surviving son left that could support Mom, so he got an early out. He went back to Vietnam, and then they decided that he should get an early out, and at that time I was over in Thailand then, and I remember calling him from the base in Thailand to his base in Phu Cat, Vietnam. And he told me he was getting out of the service. I said, you've only been in 6 months. But anyway, he got out. He only did 6 months in the military out of a 4-year hitch. He got out with an honorable discharge, and more power to him. So
What were some of your duties like in Thailand?
Well, my main duty was loading aircraft with munitions. I was the number 4 man on a 4 man load crew. You had a crew chief, 1 man, 2 man, 3 man. But I was the fourth, including the crew chief. And what I did is I drove the jammer, the lift truck that lifted the bombs up underneath the wings onto the pylons and stuff. That's what I did. I was the jammer driver, they called it. And my duty was to go get them off the bomb trailer and bring them over to the aircraft in the revetment and load them along with the crew chief. And he's sitting there closing the rack and all that stuff as I lifted up into the hooks. And after a while, you get really good at that. You can almost do it blindfolded and stuff. But the A1 had 12 stations on each side of the fuselage. It had a centerline fuel tank and then an inboard fuel tank on one side, a minigun on the other side, and then you had Mark 47 white phosphorus bombs on each side. Then you had a Lao 59 rocket launcher on each side, and then you had 3 CBU 25s on each side. CBU is a cluster bomb unit, and it's for anti-personnel and stuff. And our mission there at Nakhon Phanom, Thailand was SAR, search and rescue. We didn't actually fly a regular frag like to go out and support the ground troops, you know. What we did is if one of our pilots got shot down, our planes went in with the Jolly Green Giant helicopters and plucked them out of the jungle. And our planes would soften up the area if there was enemy around, because they could stay on location for 5.5 hours.
Oh, wow.
And at very slow speed because they were a single engine prop. And the pilots, which there's a bunch of them here at our reunion, they're some great guys. And they would fly with the canopies open and their scarves hanging out the window like Snoopy and the Red Baron and stuff. Oh, it was goofy, but it was neat in a way. And but yeah, that was our primary mission, and was to pluck pilots out that got shot down. So a lot of times we had to go up north into North Vietnam to get them, because that's where they got shot down. Sometimes they got shot down in places they shouldn't have got shot down at, like China, Laos, and other places like that. So, but yeah, the base there was no news media allowed on it whatsoever. No American news media, because it was a secret base. They had an outfit there called Task Force Alpha, and what that was it was CIA, because we had Air America there and all that stuff. But what we'd do is we had certain munitions that we loaded on the aircraft, and they'd go out and drop them on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and they would monitor truck traffic coming down the trail. And this Task Force Alpha would monitor the signals coming out by the vibrations of a truck going by and stuff. And they could pick up this, and they could see the volume of traffic on a daily, nightly basis. And they say, oh, they seem to be wanting to drive trucks from 4 in the afternoon till 9 at night now, instead of from 10 at night till 4 in the morning. You know, and so then that way they would adjust the frag when the bombers would come over and try to bomb them, because a lot of times they would stay off the trail and hid during the daytime, or else they'd go hide in a school compound someplace, which you're not allowed to bomb. So it was cat and mouse a lot, but that's what this Task Force Alpha did there. It was interesting.
Did you ever get to go on any of the rescue missions?
No. I didn't have any flight status whatsoever, and the planes were single seaters anyway, so there wasn't any room for anybody else. So.
How long were you in Thailand?
This is kind of funny, because we had locations at NKP Thailand, and we had planes at Da Nang, Vietnam, and we had planes at Bien Hoa, Vietnam for this search and rescue thing. So we had up in the northwest corner of Southeast Asia, Nakhon Phanom, Thailand, down in the northeastern part of Vietnam, Da Nang, and then down in the southeastern part of Vietnam at Bien Hoa, down by Saigon. And we had 2 planes at those 2 locations out of NKP, and they'd come over on a weekly basis. And then after a week, they would go home, and 2 more would come over to those locations. They'd all fly in orbit over the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and then the ones that were in Da Nang and Bien Hoa would go back to NKP, and then the 2 new ones coming to Da Nang and Bien Hoa would come over and land, and then we'd get 2 new pilots for a week, and we would be there for 3 months at a time. So when I was there, I spent, out of my year tour in Thailand, I spent 3 months in Bien Hoa and I spent 3 months in Da Nang. And then when I came back to NKP, I got my orders to go back to Da Nang for another year to work on F4s then. So I was only in Thailand 6 months. And I was in Vietnam 18 months, so.
Being in both of the 2 different countries, was there any culture shock?
Uh,
That, or?
the thing about Thailand was there was what, Takli, Karat, Uban, Udorn, and Utapao, and NKP. There was 6 bases in Thailand. When you got done with work, I always preferred the night shift from 6 at night till 6 in the morning, because you'd get rocket attacks at nighttime. And instead of getting woke up by a rocket attack, I'd just soon be working. And then that way I can just run to the bunker instead of getting up out of a dead sleep or not make it to the bunker, when the rockets come in. So I preferred nights, but during the day, when you were off, you could go downtown. And you could go downtown and have Thai food, go downtown and get laid if you wanted to. But you couldn't do that in Vietnam. You couldn't go off base. You were stuck on that compound for a year. And there was a little more freedom in Thailand than there was in Vietnam. And it was a safety thing, I guess, more than anything, so. But yeah.
So when you mentioned getting rocketed at night, was that primarily in Vietnam, or did you get
Yeah,
rocketed?
Vietnam, never in Thailand, never in Thailand. But I preferred working night shift because that's where all the work was and it went faster. Whereas you'd sit around a lot in the daytime, and because all the planes were out flying, dropping their stuff during the daytime, and then they'd come back, and then the night shift would load them. And we had I guess we had over 100 A1s there. So we had to load 100 of them every night, And that's what we did. And then they flew during the daytime. Well, they were gone for 4 to 6 hours. And so that the crews that went to work in the daytime, they didn't really do squat. Except towards the end of their shift, let's say from 3 o'clock on, some of the planes might be coming back in. They'd get them refueled and get them ready to be reloaded. Well, they might get, out of the 100 planes, they might get 20 of them loaded. Well, then we'd load the other 80 at nighttime because they were all ready to be loaded then. And we just went from one plane to another and did it that way because, yeah. So night shift went faster.
Did you have a specific aircraft that you liked loading more than the other?
No, they were all basically the same. I'll never forget when I was in Vietnam, we had what we called a max effort going on, where with F4s they flew a regular frag every day and night. In other words, Saigon, the headquarters down in Tan Son Nhut, assigned each base certain areas to target every day. And they wanted you to carry this certain kind of bomb load. Okay, well, we flew around the clock in Da Nang where we didn't fly at night in Thailand. So one shift, we had 17 load crews in Da Nang, And in one 12-hour shift, I loaded the same plane 4 times. And we had 150 aircraft there and 17 load crews. And I loaded the same plane in 12 hours 4 times.
Wow.
And I mean, I think we loaded that particular day, we loaded, I don't know, 12, 13 planes. And I mean, it was just nuts. It was so busy. I mean, you were going around with your head cut off all the time. It was just busy, busy, busy. I'm surprised, other than, I mean, obviously we were good at what we did, but that there wasn't more accidents, with the munitions and stuff. Careless because of tired or too busy or this or repetition or whatever you want to call it. But nothing like that ever happened. And I found that hard to believe. In 2 years over there, nothing like that happened. You'd think you'd at least had an explosion on the flight line, or maybe a plane destroyed by a fire from fuel or something, but nothing. So I guess we were good at what we did.
So you never had a bomb fall off the
No.
forklift?
No.
That's great.
No, that's good, yeah.
Was that something that you were pretty worried about, or?
No, not, after you start doing it for a while, it was just a non-existent problem. I suppose it could happen, but it's not going to happen to me, It's not going to happen to you. It might happen to that guy over there, but it ain't going to happen to us. So that was your attitude, and just keep doing what you're doing and do it right, and everything will be okay.
So are there any stories or memories that come to mind during your time in Thailand or Vietnam that are memorable?
Very. I was TDY down to Ben Hoa out of NKP, Thailand. And I was there for 3 months, and it was November, December of 70, and January of 71. I was in Ben Hoa. And we had 2 pilots down there. Can't remember the other guy's name, but one of them's name was Major Al Lundy. And he was in our little ops building down there every day. And they'd get up and fly in orbit every day, okay? They wouldn't maybe not drop any munitions or anything, but they'd just have to be up in the air in case somebody got shot down. They'd be ready to go. Well, he got up because they both pilots, I launched them on Christmas Eve, 1970. And they were going to go back to Thailand, and we were getting 2 new planes in from Thailand. They were going back because they'd been there a week. But 4 planes met, and they fly in orbit over the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And then the 2 go back to NKP, and the 2 come back to Ben Hoa. Well, Lundy got shot down Christmas Eve of 1970 over the trail someplace. We heard rumors that they seen a chute, and then we heard rumors they didn't see a parachute, and never heard anything about it. But about 2 days prior to this happening, he's sitting in our ops building in his camouflage flight suit, and he's sitting back reading some stuff, and he's got his feet up on the desk, and I go in there and just start talking with him, and he said hi. And he was the type of officer, if there was other officers around, it was Major Lundy or Sir, and you're familiar with that. But when you were one-on-one with him, it was Jeff and Al. Just a nice, I was the ripe old age of 19, and he was 38. And anyway, I took a picture of him. I said, do you mind if I take a picture of him? And he said, no. I took a picture of him. He's smiling with his feet up on the desk. And lo and behold, 2 days later, we launch him and he gets shot down. And I just felt terrible about it. And I got out of the service, and I said, God, I wonder how I could get these pictures to his family. I don't know if he's ever been found or if ever recovered or proven that he was he MIA? Was he killed in action? Didn't know what happened to him. Well, I went out to Washington. Oh, excuse me. Forgot this part. 1991, July. I'm sitting at my house in Tucson, Arizona, I'm driving freight trains in Arizona now. I'm out of the military and all this stuff. I'm driving freight trains out of Tucson. And I get the USA paper every day in the mail, and I happen to be off this day. And it's July 19th, 1991. And I get the USA paper, and I open it up, and on the front page is 3 pilots. One guy by the name of Stevenson, I think a guy by the name of Robinson, and a guy supposedly Al Lundy. I said, Lundy, I know that name. I got a picture of him. So I went running into my bedroom, and I went through my junk box that I had from Vietnam, and I find this picture of Al Lundy. And I'm looking at the USA. Now this is 21 years later. And and this picture in the USA paper shows this chubby-faced guy compared to this lean, mean guy that I took a picture of. And I said, if he's been missing for 21 years or in a prison camp, he would not be overweight. He would be skin and bones, I would think. So I look at the USA paper, and I see the article is done by a lady by the name of Carol Castaneda. And in the back of the USA paper, her office is in Baltimore, Maryland. And there's an 800 number there. So I called the number, and I couldn't believe this, and it says USA Today. And I said, Carol Castaneda, please? She says, one moment. And next thing I know, this is Carol. How can I help you? I said, Carol Castaneda? And she said, yes. I said, well, I'm surprised I got a hold of you. I didn't think I would. I said, I just got your newspaper in my mailbox today and your lead article on the front page. She said, yes, about the POWs. And I said, yeah. I said, that guy in the middle, I don't think that's Al Lundy. She said, well, how would you know that? I said, because I launched him the day he got shot down Christmas Eve in 1970, and I got probably the last picture taken of him right here in my hand 2 days before he was shot down. And she said, where are you at? I said, Tucson, Arizona. She said, is that a Gannett paper? I said, I think the Tucson Citizen is a Gannett. Well, can I send a photographer and a reporter out to talk to you? I said, I'm really not in this for me. I want to find out from you how to get this picture to his family. I've had it for 21 years, and I have no clue as to how to get it. I don't even know where he was from. Well, anyway, she made me agree to an interview and photos, and I got all the stuff in that room over there, and it's anyway, the newspaper come out and interviewed me, and then this Carol Castaneda told me, and she said, who you want to get a hold of is a guy by the name of Ted, and I can't remember his last name to save my butt, but he was someplace in North Carolina, and he was in charge of the MIA and POWs that missing in action and stuff from the Vietnam War. He gave me his number, and she said, don't tell him that I gave you this number. And I said, okay. I want to say his name is Ted Bundy, but wasn't that a mass murderer? Yeah, but it's not Bundy. I'd know it if I heard it, but I can't think of his name. Anyway, he's in North Carolina someplace. So I called him after I finished talking to her and had this interview. And I said, is this Ted? And he said, yeah, who's this? And I said, my name is Jeff Sands. And I said, I'm calling you. I said, the article in the USA paper today has 3 pictures of 3 POWs, supposedly. And I said, I have a picture of one of them that was taken 2 days before he was shot down in 1970, Christmas Eve of 1970. And he said, how'd you get my number? I said, well, I'm not supposed to tell you. He said, it was Carol Castaneda, wasn't it? I said, I'm not supposed to tell you that. He said, damn her. Anyway, he said, so I went on to tell him this story, and he said, send me the picture, and I'll see to it that it gets to the Lundys. I said, well, I can see. He said, sir, I can't give you their address. I said, okay, I understand that. So what I did, David, is I typed up a letter of introduction as to my name, who I was, where I was, why I know their father, husband, whatever, and why I took this picture. And basically a letter of introduction. Well, I sent this to this Ted guy in North Carolina. And then that was 1991, and that was the last I heard of anything until 1993. I go out with my wife and my daughter to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to go look at the Vietnam Wall. I want to see it. So I went out there. I found his name on the wall. I found a couple other guys that I knew that lost their lives over there. We're done looking at the wall, and we're walking up. Have you ever been out there?
Yep.
Okay. And at the end of the wall, they have all these souvenir stands. Or they did. It was summertime. And there was all kinds of POWMIA memorabilia and stuff. And my wife's name at that time was Julie. And she said, Jeffrey, look at that. And it had a picture of one of them gray T-shirts with the POWMIA thing here. And then on the back, it had a picture of a portion of the wall. But the particular portion of the wall had Al Lundy right on top, L. Lundy Jr. She said, look at that, Jeffrey, there's Lundy's name. You're going to laugh at this, but the woman working the stand, her husband was one of the other guys in that picture in 1991 on the cover of USA. And she said, you know Al Lundy? I said, I launched him the day he was shot down out of Bien Hoa, Vietnam. She said, and then she introduced herself to me, and then I told her about this Ted guy. She said, oh, he's an asshole, because her husband was missing too. And I said, well, I've never heard anything. I sent this picture to him in 1991 in July, and I haven't heard anything out of the Lundys, anything out of him. As far as I know, the picture's gone. And you didn't have copies back in 1991, otherwise I'd have made 15 of them, you know. But anyway, she said, well, I'll give you Al Lundy Jr.'s number. And I said, really? And he was a lawyer at Hermosa Beach, California, Los Angeles, and Al Lundy Jr. And so I couldn't wait to get back to Tucson, because like I said, this is before cell phones and stuff. So I couldn't just pick up the phone and call him. So I had to wait to get back to Tucson, Arizona. I got back to Tucson, and it was the middle of the afternoon, like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, summertime. And I called this number, and it said, I can't remember, blah, blah, Lundy Law Office. But he was the last name of 3 names in this law office. And she said, can I help you? I said, yeah, Al Lundy Jr., please. He's in court today. Can I take a message? And I said, yeah, my name is Jeff Sands, and I got some information about his father. And then she said, well, what's it about? I said, well, it's about his father. And she said, okay, because she told me he was in court. I said, okay, here's my number, my name, and all this other stuff. So I hang up, and I go walking out of my kitchen to go to the bathroom. Before I get to the bathroom, the phone's ringing. And I go back and I answer. I go, hello, and he says, Jeff Sands? I said, yeah. He said, Al Lundy Jr. I said, I thought you were in court. He said, not when it comes to my dad. He said, what? I said, well, the reason I'm calling you is because I talked to Mrs. So-and-so at the souvenir stand at the Vietnam Wall, and I said, I sent you a picture of your dad in 1991 with a letter of introduction. And he said, oh, you're the one who sent that. I said, yeah. I said, well, didn't you get the letter of introduction? He says, no, that asshole Ted just sent us this and said he found it and wanted you to have it. I said, well, I sent a letter of introduction along with that. And then he started asking, he said, what kind of plane was my dad flying that day? I said, an A-1H. And I said he had a full SAR load on him, and he was on his way back to Nakhon Phanom from Bien Hoa. And he asked me some other question. He asked me who his wingman was, and I knew at that time, but it's been so long ago now I can't remember the wing. And he said, well, you were there then, weren't you? And I said, yes, I was. Well, then, lo and behold, I got a bunch of correspondence from him and his sisters, and they sent me a book about their dad that they had put to, it wasn't a book, it was about this thick, and it was like a loose leaf thing, but it was really interesting. It said, Our Dad, Major Lundy, and it was written by the kids, and it had pictures in there, and it was just all terrible, because he was 38 when he was shot down. And that, you said anything memorable, well, that, I was a 19-year-old kid, and that bothered me. Christmas Eve, and then all those years later, getting in touch with the family, and I've yet to meet any of them. And I'm sure his wife Joanna is dead now. She's got to be, because he was 38. I'm guessing that she probably was 38 or so. And if he was 38 in 1970, he'd be 88 right now, 88 or 89. And I might be alive, she might be alive, she may be dead, I'm not sure. But the kids are all alive, I guess. But I'd sure like to go out to California and walk into that law office and meet his son. And that's probably about the only memorable thing that happened to me over there. And I got all documented proof of it. I got the Tucson Citizen articles, I got my little hometown article in there, and I got the USA article in there with pictures and all that other stuff. So, but yeah, that's about the only thing. And then another thing, when I was in Thailand, we did you ever hear of the Sante prison raid?
No.
Okay, well, it was November of 1970. President Nixon ordered this raid on this prison camp, supposed prison camp in North Vietnam called Sante. They made it look like an invasion was coming in from the coast of North Vietnam, and our aircraft, along with the Green Berets and Jolly Green Giant helicopters, were coming in from the east, diverting all their attention from the west, like they were being invaded, because they had all kinds of flares, I guess, and bombing going on over on the coast. And we were coming in on the backside with our aircraft, and I think it was 3 Jolly Green Giant helicopters, because they figured that there could be up to 80 guys in this camp. Well, when we got there, they crash landed a Jolly Green in the middle of this camp, killed every guard, and there was not one prisoner there. Nothing, just piss poor intelligence. And I've been in there talking with some of these pilots about it, and they said, yeah, that was terrible, because we went through a lot of time, a lot of effort, and we could have lost a lot of lives, because they said to the west of that prison camp there was at least 35,000 North Vietnamese regulars that could have showed up there when this was happening with nobody there. But evidently they got tipped off something was coming, and they moved them, or they just moved them on a regular basis. So I don't know what happened, and guess we never will know. But that was my 2 big things in Southeast Asia. I'm surprised they haven't made a movie about it. But
So you said you did 6 months in Thailand and 18 months in Vietnam. How soon after getting back did you get out of the military?
I came back in June of 1972, and I was supposed to get out of the military in June of 73. Well, along about March, I found out I was getting an early out, and I got out April 9th instead of June 25th or 6th when I was supposed to get out. So I got out 9 months after I got back to the States.
Was that just because they're going through a drawdown? Or?
Yeah, it was, and they didn't need my AFSC, my Armed Forces Specialty Code. They didn't need bomb and rocket loaders anymore like they did 3 years earlier when I went in and stuff, and the Vietnam thing was wearing down. In fact, it was over in 75 and I was out of there in 72. So, but that was why they didn't need my specialty in the service anymore.
What did you do next after that?
I got out of the service. I went back to my hometown in St. James where I was born, and my mom and dad still live there. I had my oldest brother living in Indiana, the reason I went into the Air Force, and then my next oldest brother was living in Phoenix, Mesa, Arizona. And I dicked around in my hometown doing construction jobs here, construction jobs there, digging ditches, you name it. And there was just nothing going on. And there was a recession going on in 1973. And Delta, United, Northwest Airlines, they weren't loading bombs on their planes, so they didn't need me. So I was talking to my brother one day he said, why don't you come out to Arizona? There's nothing going on in Minnesota. So I went out to Arizona and I got a job right away tending bar. I tended bar at 3 places down there, one for about 3 years, Mesa Country Club Golf Course. And after I'd been there about 2 years, I knew most of the members, and one day one of the members come in and they were playing golf in a foursome, and he had won, so he had to buy drinks for everybody, which is odd to me. If you lose, you should get them bought for you, but he won and he had to buy them. It's goofy. But anyway, when he left, he didn't sign his ticket because you didn't have to pay. All you have to do is just sign, and then they'd send the bill out to you at the end of the month. Well, he left and he didn't sign his ticket. So I started looking through the membership book, and it had his name, his wife's name, kid's name, address, phone number, and occupation. And I originally went out there to go to work on the railroad, and it said Southern Pacific Transportation Company, SP Railroad. So I gave him enough time to get home. He lived on the golf course on one of the fairways, and I gave him about 15 minutes to get home, and I called him, and I said, Bruce, and he said, yeah. I said, this is Jeff at the club. Yeah, what's up? I said, you didn't sign your ticket. And he said, oh, just go ahead and sign my name to it. I said, wait a minute. What do you do for the Southern Pacific? He said, well, I'm the division safety officer. And I said, well, Bruce, I've never told you this because I never knew what you did for a living. But I said, the reason I'm in Arizona is to work on the railroad. Oh, yeah, what do you want to be? I said, conductor, brakeman, switchman, I don't care. He said, no, you want to be an engineer. I said, okay, I want to be an engineer. He said, we're hiring 51 of them as we speak. He got me an interview. I got the job, and I did it for the next 28 years out of Tucson, Arizona. Wow. Yeah, so it's got an excellent retirement, which I'm retired. And then I'm 100% disabled from the VA, Agent Orange. I got ischemic heart disease. I got type 2 diabetes. I got AFib. You name it, I got it. And if anything Vietnam can give you, I got it. And a lot of guys have got it I've been talking to in here. And in fact, I got this on because I got these horrible blotches on here from blood thinners. And so, but anyway, everything's end up hunky-dory, and I'm very comfortably retired, and the railroad was good to me. The VA's been excellent to me. I don't know your experience with the VA. Some people say it's good, some people say it's bad, but there's a lot of stuff you should do on your own when you go to the VA. Take it upon yourself. Just don't think that they're going to do it. Go and make sure that they do it. Know your way around your VA hospital. Like my first experience was Phoenix, Arizona, and which is the one that caused all this stink here about 3 years ago. I had a hernia operation done there, and I never had any problems. But now the one I did have problems with is the one in Tucson. You'd have an appointment at 11 in the morning, and you still weren't seeing your doctor at 3 in the afternoon. I don't know if it's because he wasn't there or they overbooked him or what, But 4 hours after you're still sitting there? Well, I go to the Fargo VA now in North Dakota. That place is a well-oiled machine. You have an appointment at 11, you're in at 11 or before. If you show up early, you're probably going to get in early. So, and a lot of it you got to take upon yourself, because government workers, I don't trust them. Air Force personnel, I don't trust them. You probably don't trust Army personnel getting the paperwork done. Walk it through yourself, make sure it gets done, is all I'm saying. If people would take more responsibility with the VA, they'd have better luck with it. My own experience.
Well, I have a couple questions left for you.
Okay.
Is there anything that you feel like we haven't discussed or should be added to this interview?
I can't, if it is, David, I don't know what it would be. I can't think of anything.
Okay. And my last question is just, what message would you like to leave behind for future generations who view this interview?
As far as people wanting to go in the military, or just you want my opinion of the military now that that's what we've been talking about, or my opinion of life?
However you interpret it. Do you want to talk about both, life or the military?
After all I've been through, which you've been through a lot, being deployed to Afghanistan and stuff, it didn't hurt me. It didn't hurt me. In fact, it did me a lot of good. I must say, I don't know when you went in. I went in at 18. I did a lot of growing up very fast, which I'm sure you did too.
Oh, yeah.
And it didn't hurt you. It's probably going to make you a better person. It's probably going to make your kids a better person, because after what you've been through, you can tell them, well, this is what I did, and this is how I've survived. But now the people who don't go in, that are perfectly capable of going in, and you talk about all this debt from college, that these, loans, student loans, go in the military and have the military pay for it. If you want to go to college, you're going to college. They're helping you, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Why is everybody in such a, uproar about student debt? All they have to do is go give them a couple years in the military, and they'll help pay for it all.
Yep.
And plus, you can serve your country. You might get some benefits out of it later on down the line. Who knows? But your college will be paid for, and you won't have that debt hanging over your head for the next 15 years, or whatever it may be, depending on, how much your school is. That military didn't hurt me. It did me a world of good. As far as I'm concerned, I grew up. I went in at 18. I got discharged at 22, but I felt more like I was 28, 29 with life experiences that I experienced. So I seen how the other half lived compared to how we live here in the United States. And you know as well as I do, there's a lot of people that take their lifestyle for granted here, and they've never paid a dime for it in time, money, or anything, any kind of sacrifice. They just keep receiving, they never give. They keep receiving, they never give. And you'll understand that being a veteran yourself. So that's my thoughts.
I just want to say thank you for taking the time to do this interview, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, bud. Appreciate it.